Hello, my name is Ishanda Shahid, and today I will be providing my case analysis on Jeffrey Dunn and Sesame Workshop, Bringing Big Bird Back to Health. Topics that I will be focusing are the identity and major interpretation of Sesame Street, key events that affected Sesame Street, and major actions that Jeffrey Dunn established. So what is Sesame Street? The following aspects have been at the core of Sesame Street's workshop historical identity. Sesame Street started off as children TV's pioneer. It was created in 1969 by Joan Gomes Cooney and Lloyd Morset, designed to provide quality education as a way to close the gap for poorer children, funded through government grants, private funds, and donations. For the past 50 years, Sesame Street has been produced in 30 countries and reaching children in 150 nations. The show focuses on Muppets interacting with adults and children, revolving around educational program similar to like counting and, learning letters. Its mission is to use the educational power of media to help all children reach their highest potential, particularly children in underprivileged areas. Me, myself, I came from humble beginnings. So early in my childhood, I remember our family not being able to afford cable. So I relied heavily on Sesame Street for my entertainment and education. I love some of the favorite characters such as Big Bird and Ernie and Bert, and my all-time favorite, Dick Grouch. And my parents loved it because the programming had substance to it, and it was also a way for me to learn. While many families loved Sesame Street, the rise of cable and digital age television and media has definitely affected Sesame Street's ability to thrive. Below are some of the signs that Sesame Street's workshop was in a losing streak prior to Dunn's arrival as CEO. Licensing in businesses at Sesame Street had declined since the lucrative heyday of the Tickle Me Elmo doll, which was one of Sesame Street's biggest hits in the 90s. Sesame Street had lost 70% of its DVD and 50% of its overall licensing since 2006. The fact that many people were transitioning to streaming definitely aided in the decline of DVDs because streaming services allow for individuals to not have to worry about having a DVD device or worry about purchasing DVDs. So the times aided in this decline, as well as the production costs for Sesame Street far outpaced revenues from the show. In 2013, Sesame Street ran $15 to $18 million deficits off the show alone. They were simply not producing enough revenue to keep up with the production costs, which caused operating losses to grow, and management reacted with aggressive cost reductions to mitigate the declining revenues, including staffing reduction. One of the issues at Sesame Street was the fact that as new technologies were advancing and more children's programming were being competitive, such as Blue's Clues and shows similar to Dora the Explorer, Sesame Street's developers and writers and producers were not evolving as quickly as the times. They were still stuck in their ways, and because of that, it was causing them to fall behind. So who is Jeffrey Dunn? In 2014, Jeffrey Dunn became Sesame Street's fourth CEO and the first individual to come from outside of the company in regards to being a CEO. He's a Harvard Business School graduate, class of 81, Harvard University's Advanced Leadership Initiative Fellow, and also the former president and CEO of Hit Entertainment, former COO of Nickelodeon Networks, and president of Nickelodeon Film and Enterprises. There, his experience included brand expansion into film, consumer products, publishing, and theme parks. While Jeffrey Dunn was not a part of the initial Sesame Street team, he had worked on many projects with them before on the show Network Noggin. So he was familiar with Sesame Street, and he also believed in the brand and in the mission. After Dunn decided to take on the role of CEO, some of the first moves that he decided to do revolved around getting to know the individuals at Sesame Street, opposed to just coming into the company and laying things down with an iron fist. So in an attempt to get to know the employees at Sesame Street prior to him starting his new position, Dunn reached out to the current Sesame Street top executives to build rapport. He sent them all an email, and he wanted to get to know who his team was, as well as asked them about their opinion regarding, the future for the organization and what are some changes or some goals that they had in mind for him in an attempt to bring Sesame Street back to life. Throughout his transition, Dunn brought in several new leaders from the for-profit world, which he is originally from, that he knew he could trust. And he also filled the remainder of his team with talented Sesame Street veterans, individuals who had been in the company for over 10 years that believed in the mission and were passionate about the organization remaining. Dunn reorganized Sesame Street into two broad business units. The first business unit was Sesame's media and education activities, which was ran by Steve Young, who was one of Dunn's new leaders who came outside of the company. And then Sesame's social impact and philanthropic work was ran by Sherry Weston, who was a long-term Sesame veteran. Dunn's goal was to end the functional silos whereby only the CEO could referee and decide and give responsibility to leaders who would control all aspects of their business. He wanted his leaders to be able to maintain and control everything that fell underneath their umbrella. He believed that if he came into a meeting with him, he didn't want the meeting to end just with more to talk about. He always wanted a goal set and a next step. So that was the unique aspect about Dunn, because in the past, many of Sesame Street's employees complained that they weren't aware of what was going on in other sectors of the business, and they often felt like they were in the dark at many times. So he immediately came in, and his goal was to change, that perception in the culture immediately. So along with the change, the structure of the organization, Dunn's definitely wanted to focus on moves that would get Sesame Street winning again. In an attempt to do so, he renegotiated broadcasting rights, and he was able to land Sesame Street a 5-year partnership with HBO. This partnership was huge simply because it would allow them to have enough funding to be able to produce new content. So opposed to the 18 episodes that Sesame Street was normally able to produce a year, they were now bumped up to 35 episodes. And it also allowed HBO to be able to compete with other streaming services like Amazon and Netflix, because while HBO's had some of our favorite shows such as Game of Thrones, House of Cards, to name a few, HBO was lacking children's programming, so partnering with Sesame Street gave them the opportunity to fill that gap. Now, while Sesame Street was originally streamed on PBS, Dunn also renegotiated a deal with PBS to not leave them out. They agreed to a deal where PBS would receive content for free after 9 months of exclusive airing on HBO. They would receive an hour worth of content a day. However, they would be separated into two 30-minute segments that would air at different times throughout the day. Dunn also simplified Sesame Street's mission to help kids grow smarter, stronger, and kinder. Along with those changes, Dunn definitely wanted to change the culture within Sesame Street, so he did so by conducting surveys throughout the company to help his leaders develop skills that supported the organization's mission and goal. Surveys were taking place by members of all levels of the organization, so they were able to give their opinion and not be left out. Sesame also built partnerships with startup companies and leading tech companies to raise its profile in the digital space. But to not focus simply on the marketing, when it comes to philanthropic work, Sesame Street definitely put some time and effort into that as well. They helped to promote hygiene in India, focused on girls' education in Afghanistan, as well as develop programming to help trauma for children of U.S. military families that were affected by death or injuries. Some of my final thoughts are that the alterations that Dunn made at Sesame Street definitely related to many successes. While some people believed that they didn't like the shift of where Sesame Street was going, those were the same people who were not bringing ideas to the forefront to ensure that Sesame Street didn't go away. I personally believe that Dunn's initial work immediately caused positive impacts at Sesame Street. While change comes with both positive opinions and negative opinions, the positive changes that Dunn made aided in saving the future of Sesame Street. He utilized his expertise and skills to help revitalize Sesame Street as a mission-driven organization that has continued to stay at the forefront of childhood education, along with adapting it into a new culture. For instance, partnerships with HBO and Apple are helping to allow Sesame Street to stay relevant to our new modern technology-age children. Some of those partnerships are what's going to give Sesame Street the ability to stay relevant in a fast-paced world that's focused on digital media. So that's my presentation. Again, thank you for your time. My name is Ishanda Shaheed, and these are my final thoughts.